The blood on my hands wasn't mine. I stared at the crimson smears across my palms, my mind disconnecting from the horror of what had just happened. 3 hours. That's how long it had been since I'd put Marco down for his afternoon nap, kissed his dark curls, and whispered that I loved him. 3 hours since my world had been ripped apart. The apartment was destroyed, furniture overturned, drawers yanked open and emptied across the floor, the window in Marco's bedroom shattered. Glass crunched under my feet as I stood in the doorway of his room, staring at the empty bed, the scattered toys, the small shoe he'd lost in whatever struggle had taken place. My son was gone, and I knew exactly who had taken him. The note had been pinned to his pillow with a knife, theatrical, cruel, designed to terrorize. 4 words in Italian that made my blood run ice cold. Il debito deve pagare. The debt must be paid. Dante's debt. Dante's enemies. Dante's world that I'd run from 3 years ago, pregnant and terrified, swearing I'd never look back. But they'd found me anyway. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The 3rd call from Detective Morrison in the last hour. I ignored it again. The police couldn't help me. Not with this. Not when the people who had Marco operated outside every law, every jurisdiction, every moral boundary that civilized society recognized. There was only one person who could get my son back. The same man who destroyed me 3 years ago. I grabbed my jacket, checked the loaded Glock I'd kept hidden since leaving New York, and headed for the door. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, was standing in the hallway, her elderly face creased with concern. "Sophia, the police were just here. They said..." "I know." I kept moving toward the stairs. "I have to go." "Where? You should wait for them to. They can't help me." The words came out harder than I intended. I softened my voice. "Thank you for calling them, but I need to handle this myself." She grabbed my arm, surprisingly strong for someone in her 70s. "That man who came looking for you last month, the one in the expensive suit who asked questions. This is about him, isn't it?" My blood ran cold. What man? Italian, very handsome, very dangerous. He wanted to know about you, about any children. I told him nothing. Her eyes were sharp, knowing. But he watched the building for days after that. I should have warned you sooner. Dante, or one of his men. They'd known where I was, known about Marco. And still, they hadn't approached directly, which meant they'd been watching. Waiting. For what? I pulled free from Mrs. Chen's grip. "If anyone else comes asking questions, tell them nothing, and stay away from my apartment. It's not safe." The flight to New York took 4 hours. 4 hours of sitting in coach, my knee bouncing with nervous energy, my mind running through every possible scenario. Most of them ended with Marco dead. Some ended with me dead too. A few ended with both of us alive but trapped forever in Dante's world. None of them ended well. I hadn't seen Dante Salvatore in 3 years. Hadn't spoken to him. Hadn't even allowed myself to think his name most days because the pain was still too raw, too devastating. The night I'd told him I was pregnant, the look on his face, disgust, anger, accusation, had carved something out of me that had never quite healed. "You think I'm stupid enough to believe that child is mine? How many others have there been, Sophia?" His words had been knives, each one finding a vital organ. I'd fled his penthouse with tears streaming down my face, his security team letting me pass without a word, because everyone in Dante Salvatore's world knew when someone had been discarded. I'd disappeared into Boston, changed my name from Moretti to Russo, found work as a waitress in a neighborhood where no one asked questions. I'd had Marco alone in a charity hospital, held him while he took his first breath, and sworn that Dante would never know about him. That my son would never be touched by the violence and corruption that defined his father's world. So much for good intentions. The cab from JFK dropped me outside Salvatore Tower at midnight. The gleaming skyscraper dominated the Manhattan skyline, its upper floors housing Dante's penthouse and the nerve center of his empire. I'd been here before, 3 years ago, back when I'd been young and stupid enough to believe that a man like Dante Salvatore could love someone like me. Back when I'd been his amante, his lover, hidden from his world, tucked away in shadows, a secret he kept from the Cosa Nostra families who would have used me against him. Security had changed. I didn't recognize the 2 men flanking the private elevator that led to Dante's penthouse. They didn't recognize me either, which was good. It meant I might still have the element of surprise. I need to see Dante Salvatore. I kept my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my throat. The larger guard, 6'4", 250 pounds of muscle stuffed into an expensive suit, looked me over with professional dismissal. Mr. Salvatore doesn't take visitors without an appointment. Tell him Sofia Moretti is here. I used my real name deliberately. Tell him it's about something he lost 3 years ago. Something flickered in the guard's eyes. Recognition? Curiosity? He pressed a finger to his earpiece, spoke in rapid Italian too low for me to catch. His expression shifted. Surprise, wariness, something that might have been respect. Mr. Salvatore will see you. He stepped aside, gesturing to the elevator. He asked that you surrender any weapons before going up. I pulled the Glock from my jacket and handed it over butt first. That's the only one I'm carrying. The guard checked the magazine, cleared the chamber, and tucked it into his jacket. If you're lying and harm Mr. Salvatore, you'll die screaming. Understood? Completely. The elevator ride to the penthouse took 45 seconds. 45 seconds to remember how to breathe, how to stand, how to face the man who'd shattered me into pieces and never looked back. The doors opened directly into Dante's living room. 20,000 square feet of obscene luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Italian marble covered the floors, and artwork worth more than most people earned in a lifetime decorated the walls. And standing in the center of it all, backlit by the glittering cityscape, was Dante Salvatore. 3 years had changed him. He was leaner, harder, his dark hair touched with gray at the temples that somehow made him even more devastating. He wore black slacks and a white dress shirt with the top 3 buttons undone, revealing the tanned column of his throat and the edge of his collarbone. His face, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw shadowed with stubble, a nose that had been broken at least once, was as brutally handsome as I remembered. But it was his eyes that destroyed me all over again. Dark brown, almost black, intense enough to strip away every defense I'd built over 3 years of survival. Those eyes tracked over me with predatory focus, cataloging every change. I'd lost weight, I knew. The stress of single motherhood and constant fear had hollowed my cheeks, sharpened my features. I'd cut my hair shorter, dyed it darker. I wore jeans and a leather jacket instead of the elegant dresses he'd once bought me. I looked nothing like the young woman who'd warmed his bed 3 years ago. His expression revealed nothing. Sofia Moretti, back from the dead. I need your help. The words tasted like ash, like surrender, like every nightmare I'd had about this moment. Do you? He moved closer with that fluid grace that had always reminded me of a predator. And why would I help you, piccola bugiarda? Little liar. The insult stung, but I'd expected it. Because they took our son. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Dante went absolutely still, his entire body tensing like a coiled spring. When he spoke again, his voice was soft, deadly, the voice that had sentenced men to death without raising an eyebrow. Say that again. Our son, Marco. He's 3 years old. He has your eyes and your stubborn temperament, and he was taken from my apartment in Boston 6 hours ago. My voice cracked despite my best efforts. They left a note, in Italian. Il debito deve pagare. The debt must be paid. Dante's jaw was granite. Who took him? I don't know, but they know about you, about us, about... There is no us. He cut me off with brutal efficiency. There hasn't been for 3 years. Not since you disappeared without a word, without a trace, making me believe you'd run off with whatever man you'd been fucking behind my back. I was never unfaithful to you. The accusation burned like acid. Not once in the year we were together. And yet you expect me to believe you carried my child for 9 months without telling me? His laugh was cold, humorless. Do you think I'm stupid, Sophia? That I don't remember that night when you claimed to be pregnant, crying and desperate, trying to trap me into... I wasn't trying to trap you. Fury exploded through my fear. I was trying to tell you that we'd created a life together, that I was terrified and needed you, and you looked at me like I was garbage, like I was a whore trying to pass off some other man's bastard as yours. Because women have tried before. His voice was ice. Do you know how many have claimed to carry my child? How many have shown up with babies that mysteriously shared my eye color, my hair, my features? DNA tests proved them all liars, every single one. Then give me a DNA test. I stepped closer, closing the distance between us despite every instinct screaming to run. Take a sample. Run every test you want. But do it after you help me get Marco back, because every second we waste arguing is another second he's terrified and alone with people who will hurt him. Just to hurt you. Something shifted in his expression. You named him Marco. After my grandfather. My throat was tight. The only man in my family who was worth a damn. Dante studied me for a long moment. I couldn't read what was happening behind those dark eyes, but I felt the weight of his assessment, his calculation. He was deciding whether to believe me, whether to help, whether my son, our son, was worth his time. Finally, he pulled a phone from his pocket and pressed a single button. Luca, get up here now and bring the DNA testing kit from the medical office. He ended the call and turned back to me. If you're lying, Sophia, if this is some elaborate scheme to extract money or favors or whatever pitiful game you're playing, I will destroy you. Completely. Do you understand? I understand. I met his gaze without flinching. And if you waste time with tests and threats while our son is being tortured by your enemies, I'll kill you myself. His smile was sharp, dangerous, and somehow approving. There's the fire I remember. The woman who told a room full of capos that their opinions on art were pedestrian and boring. That was before I knew they were all criminals. You knew exactly what we were. He moved closer still, invading my space, using his height and presence to intimidate. You knew from the first night, when you saw Giuseppe Caruso kiss my ring. You knew, and you stayed anyway because you liked the danger, the money, the power. He wasn't wrong. I'd been 23, naive, but not stupid, drawn to Dante's dark magnetism like a moth to flame. I'd told myself I could handle it, that I could be part of his world without being consumed by it. I'd been wrong. I stayed because I loved you. The admission cost me something. I stayed because I was stupid enough to believe you might love me back. Love. He said the word like it was poison. Love is for civilians, Tesoro, for people who can afford weakness. Then why did you keep me for a year? I challenged. Why did you come to my apartment 3 times a week? Why did you buy me books you'd read just so we could discuss them? Why did you hold me after nightmares and tell me about your mother? His expression closed off completely. I don't remember any of that. Liar. The elevator chimed, and a man stepped out. Tall, lean, with silver threading through his dark hair and a face marked by old scars. Luca Benedetti, Dante's consigliere, and the closest thing he had to a friend. Luca's eyes widened when he saw me. Sophia, Madonna, we thought you were dead. Disappointed? I couldn't help the bitterness. Relieved. His smile was genuine. Dante was insufferable after you left, worse than usual. I don't pay you for commentary. Dante took the small medical kit from Luca's hands. She claims the child is mine. We test first. Then we discuss next steps. The DNA test took 5 minutes. A swab of my cheek. My confirmation of Marco's location and birth date. Luca's notation of all relevant details. The sample would be rushed to Dante's private laboratory with results available in hours. Hours I didn't have. The note mentioned a debt, Dante said once the sample was secured. What debt? I don't know. I've been living in Boston under an assumed name. I haven't had contact with anyone from your world. I don't know who would have reason to. The Calabrese family. Luca's voice was grim. They're making moves against our territory in the North End. Aggressive moves. We've been pushing back, but if they learned about a son, about an heir, they'd take him as leverage. Dante's expression was carved from stone. Force me to give ground or watch my bloodline die. But they don't know for sure if Marco is yours, I pointed out. The note could be a bluff. They could be testing to see how you respond. Which means we have a narrow window. Dante moved to his desk, pulling up what looked like building schematics on a massive monitor. If they're uncertain, they'll wait before making demands. Use the time to verify the child's value. Run their own DNA comparisons if they have samples from my bloodline. How would they get those? His smile was cold. The Calabrese family has been collecting samples from Salvatore bodies for 2 decades. Every funeral, every burial, every time one of mine ends up in the morgue. They're patient, thorough. If they have Marco, they'll test him. And when they confirm he's yours, then they'll call with demands. He turned to face me. Territorial concessions, money, weapons, possibly my complete withdrawal from certain operations. They'll bleed me dry, and then kill the boy anyway, because that's what you do to enemy heirs. The casual way he said it, kill the boy, made me want to scream. Then we get him back before they can test him. We find where they're holding him, and we take him. We? Dante's eyebrow arched. We do nothing, Sophia. You'll stay here where it's safe while my men locate and retrieve the child. The hell I will. I moved toward him, fury overriding fear. He's my son. I've kept him alive for 3 years. I've protected him from your world, from people who would use him as a pawn. And I'm not sitting in your tower while someone else decides his fate. You're a civilian with no combat training, no weapons, and no understanding of how this works. His voice was inflexible. You'll be a liability. I'm his mother. I stepped into his space, close enough to smell the expensive cologne that brought back too many memories. And I'm the only one here who puts his life above your pride. So either you let me help, or I walk out that door and find him myself. We stared at each other, locked in a battle of wills that neither of us could afford to lose. I saw the calculations running behind his eyes. The risk of letting me come versus the risk of me going rogue and compromising his operation. Finally, Luca cleared his throat. She has a point, Dante. If the boy is yours, his mother's presence could be useful. Children respond better to familiar faces in crisis situations. This isn't a crisis situation. Dante's gaze never left mine. It's a war. And in war, Sophia, people die. Messy. Brutal. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get Marco back. I held his stare, including working with you. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition of the steel I'd developed over 3 years of survival. Fine, but you follow orders. My orders. If I tell you to stay back, you stay back. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. And Sophia? He leaned down until his mouth was inches from my ear. If this is a trap, if you're working with the Calabrese family to lure me into an ambush, I'll make sure you die slowly enough to regret every lie you've ever told. His breath was warm against my skin, his proximity sending unwanted shivers down my spine. I hated that my body still responded to him, that 3 years of distance hadn't erased the way he made me feel. "It's not a trap," I whispered back. "It's a mother begging the father of her child to save their son." He pulled back, his expression unreadable. "Then let's go to war." Dante's war room was exactly what I'd expected. Cold efficiency wrapped in intimidating luxury. The walls were lined with monitors showing security feeds from across the city, digital maps marking territory boundaries, and what looked like military-grade communication equipment. 6 men in expensive suits stood around a massive oak table, their conversations dying the moment we entered. All eyes turned to me. I recognized a few faces from 3 years ago. Carlo Messina, Dante's head of security, built like a tank with cold blue eyes. Antonio Greco, younger but equally dangerous, Dante's enforcer who handled problems that required a more permanent solution. The others were unfamiliar, but they all shared the same predatory awareness. These weren't businessmen. They were killers in designer suits. "Gentlemen," Dante's voice cut through the silence. "Sofia Moretti. Some of you remember her. She's here because the Calabresi family has taken her son, possibly my son. We verify paternity but operate under the assumption that the child is mine until proven otherwise." Carlo's expression remained neutral, but I caught the flash of surprise. "The boy's age?" 3 years. Dante pulled up a photo on the main screen, one he must have pulled from my phone while I was being tested. Marco's face filled the monitor, his dark curls messy, his smile gap-toothed and beautiful. My heart clenched seeing him projected like this, reduced to intelligence data. "He looks like you," Antonio observed. "The eyes especially. If Calabresi has him and runs a DNA comparison, they'll confirm his value and either make demands or eliminate him as a threat." Dante's voice was clinical, detached, as though discussing cargo instead of a child. "Our child. Time frame for location and extraction?" "Calabresi operates out of 3 primary locations." Carlo pulled up a series of building blueprints. "The social club in Chinatown, too public for holding a hostage. The warehouse district in Red Hook, possible but heavily monitored by federal surveillance. And the estate in New Jersey, private, secure, 45 minutes outside the city." "My money's on the estate." Antonio leaned forward. "They'd want to keep the boy close to Dominic Calabresi personally. Eliminate the possibility of miscommunication or leaks." Dante studied the blueprints with lethal focus. "Security profile?" "Updated 2 months ago." Carlo highlighted various sections. 12 guards on rotation, surveillance system integrated with backup generators, single access road with controlled gate. The building itself is reinforced, limited entry points, which makes it a fortress. I stepped closer to the table, ignoring the way several men tensed at my proximity. "But fortresses have weaknesses: water, power, food supplies, people going in and out." "This isn't your concern," Carlo started, but Dante cut him off with a raised hand. "She's right. Fortresses require maintenance. What's the supply schedule?" Carlo pulled up additional information. "Groceries delivered twice weekly. Laundry service on Thursdays. Garbage pickup Monday and Friday. Today's Tuesday." I looked at Dante. "Can we intercept tomorrow's garbage pickup? Replace the crew? And walk right in the front door?" Antonio's laugh was skeptical. "They'll verify identities, run background checks. Then we don't use your people." I turned to face him. "We use civilians who won't trigger their vetting process. People who have legitimate reasons to be there." "You want to use contractors." Dante's voice was thoughtful. "Real sanitation workers who don't know they're part of an operation." "Exactly. We intercept the truck, redirect it to a secondary location, keep the real crew contained, but unharmed. Your people take their places wearing body cameras. Once inside, they locate Marco and create an extraction point." The room was silent. Then Luca, who'd been quiet until now, smiled slowly. It could work. Calabrese would be expecting an assault, a show of force. They wouldn't anticipate a Trojan horse. It's risky. Carlo's professional skepticism wasn't personal, but pragmatic. If they discover the substitution before our people are inside, they'll kill the boy immediately. They'll kill him anyway once they confirm he's Dante's heir. I met Carlo's gaze without flinching. At least this way we control the timeline. Dante moved to stand beside me, his presence overwhelming in its intensity. How do you know about infiltration tactics? I read. It wasn't quite a lie. I'd spent 3 years researching everything I could about his world, about security protocols and extraction methods, preparing for the day his enemies might find me. And I dated a man who used to tell me stories about his operations when he thought I wasn't paying attention. Something flickered in his expression. Recognition, perhaps, of those late nights when he'd held me and talked about his day, trusting me with information he shouldn't have shared. Information I'd remembered. All right. Dante's decision was instant, absolute. We intercept the garbage truck tomorrow morning at 600. Carlo, you handle logistics. Antonio, I want 3 backup teams positioned around the perimeter. Luca, coordinate with our contacts in NYPD. I want traffic cameras offline during the operation. And me? I asked. You stay here. No. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. I know Marco. I know how he thinks, what frightens him, how to calm him down if he's panicking. You need me on site. What I need is for you to not die and make this entire operation meaningless. His jaw was granite. You'll monitor from here. If we extract Marco successfully, you'll be the first voice he hears over comms. That's the compromise. It wasn't a compromise. It was an order. But arguing in front of his men would undermine both of us. Fine. But I want a direct line to whoever's going in. No delays, no filters. Agreed. He turned back to his team. Dismissed. Briefing at 0500 tomorrow. Luca, stay. The men filed out, leaving the 3 of us alone in the war room. Luca moved to pour 3 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter, handing one to me without asking if I wanted it. To family, he toasted quietly. May we bring him home. The whiskey burned going down, warming the ice that had settled in my chest. Why are you helping me? 3 years ago you told me to leave Dante's world, that I was a liability he couldn't afford. I told you that you'd get hurt if you stayed, Luca corrected. I never said I wanted you gone. Dante was different with you, softer, more human. When you disappeared. Luca. Dante's voice was warning. She deserves to know. Luca met his friend's glare without flinching. You looked for her, Sophia. For 6 months, Dante had people searching everywhere. Hospitals, morgues, women's shelters, bus stations. He thought you'd been killed. That his enemies had taken you because of his connection to you. My throat tightened. I didn't know. Because you vanished completely. Dante's voice was cold. New name, new city, new identity. Either you're very good at disappearing, or someone helped you. Which was it? I debated lying, but he'd find out eventually. Both. I used your money. The account you'd set up for me. I cleaned it out the night I left. $50,000 to disappear. His expression was unreadable. That account was supposed to be a safety net. It was, just not the kind you intended. And who helped you? I hesitated. Giving up my source would put them at risk. But Marco's life hung in the balance, and I couldn't afford to keep secrets. Lucia Ferretti. She ran your cover operations 3 years ago. She owed me a favor. Lucia Ferretti is dead. Dante's words were flat. Car accident 2 years ago. Brake line failure. No. The room tilted slightly. Lucia had been kind to me, protective. One of the few women in Dante's organization who hadn't treated me like a threat or a whore. Was it really an accident? Unknown. At the time, I assumed natural criminal attrition. His gaze was penetrating. Now I wonder if Calabresi has been playing a longer game than we realized, removing people who might have information about you, about Marco. You think they've been planning this for years? The scope of it was terrifying. I think the Calabresi family is thorough. Luca pulled up additional files on the main screen. Look at this. Timeline of incidents over the last 3 years. 2 of our accountants died in what appeared to be random muggings. An attorney we used for custody disputes had a fatal heart attack at 42. A nurse from the hospital where Dante was treated last year died in a home invasion. All people who would have had access to DNA samples or personal information. I studied the timeline, seeing the pattern emerge. They've been collecting data and eliminating sources. Dante's voice was grim. Which means they've been preparing for this move. The question is, why now? Because they finally found me. The guilt was crushing. I got sloppy. Last month I used my real credit card at a bookstore. Just once. I thought it was safe because it was in Boston, far from New York, from your world. But they must have been monitoring for any financial activity connected to Sofia Moretti. 1 mistake in 3 years. Dante's tone was unreadable. You were more careful than most people in witness protection. Not careful enough. I blinked back tears, refusing to cry in front of him. Marco paid the price for my carelessness. No. His hand caught my chin, forcing me to meet his eyes. The touch was familiar, intimate, devastating. The Calabresi family paid the price for threatening what's mine. And they'll keep paying until I've taken everything from Dominic the way he's tried to take from me. Is that what Marco is to you? I pulled away from his touch. Possession? Property? Another piece in your power games? He's a 3-year-old child who carries my blood. Dante's voice dropped, became something raw and dangerous. And if he is my son, Sofia, then yes, he's mine. To protect, to raise, to train in the ways of this family. He'll have everything. Power, wealth, security that you could never provide working as a waitress in Boston. He has love. My voice shook with fury. He has a mother who would die for him. He has bedtime stories and homemade birthday cakes and soccer practice on weekends. He has a normal childhood that you want to destroy by dragging him into your world of violence and death. He has all of that, until Calabresi puts a bullet in his head. Dante's words were brutal, calculated to hurt. Love doesn't stop assassins, Tesoro. It doesn't prevent kidnapping or manipulation or using children as leverage. Only power does that. Only fear. And I will make this city fear what happens when someone threatens a Salvatore. He doesn't know he's a Salvatore. The words burst out before I could stop them. He doesn't know his father's name, doesn't know about this world. I was going to tell him eventually, when he was old enough to understand, but I wanted to give him a few more years of innocence. Innocence is a luxury we can't afford. Dante moved away, pouring himself more whiskey. When we get him back, that changes. He'll live here, be educated properly, learn what it means to be my heir. You haven't even met him. My voice rose. You haven't held him or heard him laugh or seen how he cries when he has nightmares. You don't know him, and you're already planning to turn him into a weapon. I'm planning to keep him alive. Dante's shout matched mine. Do you understand what the Calabresi family will do if they confirm Marco's DNA? They won't just kill him quickly, Sofia. They'll torture him first. Film it. Send it to me piece by piece until I give them what they want. And when they've bled me dry, they'll kill him anyway and dump his body where it will be found as a warning to anyone else who crosses them. The image was so vivid, so horrific, that I swayed on my feet. Luca caught my arm, steadied me. "Sit down," he murmured. "When did you last eat?" I couldn't remember. The flight from Boston, the DNA test, the planning session, all of it had happened in a blur. "I'm fine." "You're pale and shaking." Luca guided me to a chair. "And no use to anyone if you collapse. I'll have food sent up." You need to be functional for tomorrow." Dante's voice was back to its usual control. "Eat, rest, we'll wake you when it's time." He was right, and I hated it. Hated that he was always right, always in control, always 3 steps ahead while I scrambled to keep up. "Where am I sleeping?" "Your old room, unless you'd prefer somewhere else." "My old room." The bedroom I'd used during the year we were together. Decorated in soft blues and creams with a balcony overlooking the city and a closet full of clothes he'd bought me. I hadn't been able to take anything when I left, hadn't wanted reminders of what I was running from. "That's fine." I stood, pride keeping my spine straight even though exhaustion pulled at me. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet, Sophia." His dark eyes held mine. "We haven't confirmed Marco is mine. If the DNA test comes back negative, you're on your own." The cruelty of it was breathtaking. You'd abandon him? A 3-year-old child being held by your enemies? I'd have no obligation to a child that isn't mine. His voice was implacable. "This organization has resources, but they're not infinite. Every operation is calculated, every risk weighed against potential gain. If Marco isn't a Salvatore, he's not my concern. He's an innocent child. This world doesn't care about innocence." Dante moved closer, his presence overwhelming. "It cares about power, about bloodlines, about debts and territories and old grudges. You left to protect Marco from this reality. But reality found you anyway, and now you need me, need my power, my violence, my willingness to do things that would destroy you. So don't stand there and judge me for the same ruthlessness you're begging me to use on your behalf." He was right. I was a hypocrite asking him to save my son using methods I found morally reprehensible, asking him to be a monster while condemning him for being one. "I'm sorry." The apology cost me everything. "You're right. I need you. I need your power and your connections and your willingness to do whatever it takes. And I hate myself for it, but I'll swallow my pride and my principles if it means getting Marco back safely." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise maybe at my honesty. "Good. Then we understand each other." "We understand that I'll sell my soul if necessary." I met his gaze. "But don't mistake that for surrender, Dante. Don't think that because I'm asking for help, I'm yours to control again. Once Marco is safe, we're done. Completely." His smile was dangerous, knowing. "You really believe that?" "I have to." "Then believe this instead, piccola bugiarda." He closed the distance between us, his hand sliding into my hair, tilting my head back. "If that boy is mine, and I think we both know he is, then you're not going anywhere. Not to Boston, not to another city, not to another life. You'll stay here where I can protect you both, where you both belong. I don't belong to you anymore. You never stopped belonging to me." His mouth hovered over mine, close enough that I could feel his breath. "You left, but you never filed for dissolution of our relationship with the family. You never formally severed ties, which means in the eyes of every famiglia in this city, you're still mine. We were never married. Marriage is a legal contract. What we had was deeper than that. You were under my protection, in my bed, part of my world. Those bonds don't break just because you run away, Sophia. Then I'm breaking them now." I tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, not painful but immovable. "You can't break what you don't understand." His voice was dark velvet, seductive and terrifying. But you'll learn. After tomorrow, after we bring Marco home, you'll understand exactly what it means to be mine. He released me then, stepping back with that same predatory grace. Get some rest. We have a war to win. I fled. There was no other word for it. I fled from his presence, from his intensity, from the way my body still responded to him despite 3 years and 1,000 reasons to hate him. Luca led me to my old room, left me with a promise that food would arrive shortly, and closed the door with a soft click. Alone finally, I let myself crumble, sank onto the bed I'd once shared with Dante, and pressed my face into the pillow to muffle the sobs that tore through me. My son was in danger. I was trapped in the world I'd escaped, and the man I'd once loved, might still love, God help me, was treating this like a business transaction. But he was my only hope. Tomorrow we'd go to war. And somehow, I'd find the strength to face whatever came next. For Marco. Always for Marco. The DNA results arrived at 3 a.m. I wasn't sleeping. Hadn't been able to despite the exhaustion weighing down my bones. I'd paced the length of my old room for hours. Memories assault me from every corner. The balcony where Dante and I had shared wine and stories under the stars. The bathroom where he'd drawn me baths and washed my hair with surprising gentleness. The bed where we'd made love with an intensity that had terrified and exhilarated me. This room had been my sanctuary once. Now it felt like a beautiful prison. The knock was soft, respectful. I opened the door to find Luca holding a manila envelope, his expression carefully neutral. The results? My voice was hoarse. Dante wants to see you in his office. The walk down the hallway felt endless. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a prayer I didn't know how to voice. Please let him be Marco's father. Please let Dante care enough to help. Please let this nightmare end. Dante's office was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood, leather, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He stood with his back to the door, silhouetted against the pre-dawn sky, holding what I assumed was the test results. Close the door. His voice was quiet, controlled, revealing nothing. I obeyed, my hands trembling slightly as I pressed my back against the wood. Well? He turned then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Confusion, uncertainty, something almost like fear. 997% probability of paternity. He read from the paper in his hands. Marco Russo is my biological son. The relief was so intense it nearly drove me to my knees. Thank God. You're welcome. His dark humor was unexpected. Tell me about him. What? Marco. You've had him for 3 years. I want to know everything. Dante moved to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, and handed one to me without asking. Start at the beginning. I took the glass but didn't drink yet. Why? Because he's my son and I've missed 3 years of his life. Something raw flickered across his face. Because you've known him every day since he was born, and I don't even know what color his eyes are. They're brown, like yours. The words came easier than I expected. He was born August 15th at 3:47 in the morning. 8 pounds. 3 ounces. He came out screaming and didn't stop for 20 minutes. The nurses said he had a temper. A Salvatore trait. Dante's lips twitched slightly. He walked at 11 months, said his first word at 9 months. No, of course. I found myself smiling despite everything. He's stubborn, determined, throws tantrums when he doesn't get his way. But he's also sweet and funny and so smart it scares me sometimes. What else? He loves dinosaurs. Has a stuffed T-Rex named Chompy that he takes everywhere. He hates broccoli but will eat any other vegetable if I make airplane noises. He's terrified of thunderstorms but fascinated by rain. He wants to be a paleontologist when he grows up. I was rambling, I knew, but Dante listened with absolute focus. He'd moved to sit on the edge of his desk, whiskey forgotten, his entire being concentrated on learning about the son he'd never known existed. He has nightmares sometimes. My voice softened. About monsters under the bed. I told him monsters aren't real, but he didn't believe me until I gave him a flashlight and we checked together every night for a month. Smart boy. Verify your intelligence before accepting comfort. Dante's approval was clear. What does he know about me? Nothing. I met his gaze. I told him his father had to go away for work, that you didn't know about him, that someday when he was older, I'd help him find you if he wanted, and if he didn't want, then I wouldn't force him. I set down my untouched whiskey. He deserves to choose his own relationships, Dante. Even with his father. He's 3. He can't make those kinds of decisions. He's 3 now. But eventually he'll be old enough to understand what you are, what you do, and he'll have to decide if he wants that life. He won't have a choice. Dante's voice hardened. He's a Salvatore. That's not a decision. It's a destiny. So was I supposed to be? The words escaped before I could stop them. You used to talk about the future, about what it would be like when things were stable enough to be public about us, about legitimizing our relationship in the eyes of the families. That was before you left. I left because you accused me of being a whore and implied our child was a bastard conceived with another man. The old wound tore open fresh. You didn't even give me a chance to explain, to prove myself. You just decided I was guilty and discarded me. Women have used pregnancy to trap men since the beginning of time. But his voice lacked conviction now. I'd seen it before, multiple times. Women claiming to carry my child to secure financial settlements or gain status. So you assumed I was like them, that I'd spent a year in your bed, in your life, learning your secrets and seeing your vulnerabilities, just to trap you with a fake pregnancy. The hurt was still there, sharp and cutting. What did I ever do to make you think so little of me? You were too perfect. His admission was quiet. Too genuine. Too good for the world I inhabit. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to reveal your true motives. When you came to me that night, crying and desperate, claiming to be pregnant, it fit. It made sense. The innocent girl was finally showing her cards. So you destroyed me preemptively. I blinked back tears. You know what the worst part was? Not the accusations. Not even the rejection. It was the look in your eyes, like I was nothing, like our entire year together had been meaningless. It wasn't meaningless. He stood, closing the distance between us. Sophia, these 3 years, I've tried to forget you, tried to convince myself you were just another woman passing through, but I couldn't. Your ghost haunted this penthouse, this city, every decision I made. You have a funny way of showing it. Bitterness laced my words. Threatening to abandon Marco if he wasn't yours. Acting like saving him is a business transaction. Because I can't afford to be weak. His voice was urgent now, almost desperate. Do you understand what would happen if the family saw me as soft? If they thought emotion could sway my decisions? They'd use it against me. They'd target everyone I care about, everyone I love, to manipulate and control me. So you love no one, care about nothing. I didn't say that. His hands framed my face, forcing me to look at him. I said I can't afford to show it. There's a difference. And Sophia, Christo, I never stopped caring about you. Even when I was convinced you'd betrayed me, part of me hoped I was wrong. His confession cracked something inside me. You still hurt me. You still threw me away. I know, and I'm sorry. The words sounded foreign in his mouth, like a language he'd never learned. I don't apologize often. It's not in my nature. But I'm sorry for that night. For my accusations. For not giving you a chance to explain. Your sorry doesn't change the past 3 years. I tried to pull away, but he held firm. It doesn't erase the terror of being pregnant and alone, of giving birth without anyone there, of raising Marco by myself, always looking over my shoulder, always afraid your enemies would find us. No, it doesn't. He released me, stepped back. But it might change what happens next. After we get Marco back, after he's safe, we need to talk about the future. There is no future for us. We established that. We established nothing. His voice hardened again. You think you can take my son and disappear again? Go back to Boston or somewhere else and pretend I don't exist? That's exactly what I think. I lifted my chin defiantly. You have no legal rights to Marco, no claim beyond biology. I've been his only parent for 3 years. Any court would grant me custody. Courts mean nothing to me, Sophia. His smile was dangerous. I don't need legal custody. I have power, resources, connections that span continents. If you try to take Marco from me, I'll find you, again and again, and eventually I'll take him. Not because I want to hurt you, but because he's mine, and I protect what's mine. By threatening the mother of your child? Rage boiled through me. By forcing me to choose between my safety and his? That's your idea of protection? My idea of protection is keeping both of you here where I can eliminate any threat before it reaches you. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming. You think you're safer in Boston? Working a job that barely pays rent? Living in a neighborhood where my enemies found you in less than 6 months? I was careful. You weren't careful enough. He cut me off brutally. And Marco paid the price. If he'd been here, under my protection, with my security team monitoring every approach, this never would have happened. The guilt was crushing, because he was right. If I'd stayed, if I'd fought through the pain and humiliation to remain in Dante's world, Marco would be safe now. Tucked in bed in this fortress of a building rather than held hostage by people who'd torture him just to make a point. I was trying to give him a normal life. My voice broke. I didn't want him raised around violence and crime and people who see children as leverage. Normal doesn't exist for people like us. Dante's voice softened slightly. My father tried to give me a normal childhood, sent me to regular schools, let me have friends outside the family. Do you know what happened? I shook my head. I was 8 years old when my best friend's father tried to kidnap me. He worked for a rival family, befriended my father specifically to get close to me. They grabbed me after school, held me for 36 hours, beat me when I wouldn't stop crying for my mother. His jaw was granite. My father got me back, killed everyone involved. But after that, I never left the estate without armed guards, never made friends who weren't thoroughly vetted, never had another normal day. The image of 8-year-old Dante, terrified and hurt, made my chest ache. I'm sorry that happened to you. Don't be sorry. It taught me the most important lesson of my life. Safety is an illusion, unless you're strong enough to enforce it. My father's mistake was believing he could give me normalcy while remaining in this world. He couldn't, and neither can you. So what do you want from me? I asked tiredly. Complete surrender? For me to accept that you own us now. I want you to accept reality. He pulled me closer, his hand settling on my waist. Marco is my heir. That's not negotiable. He'll be raised here, educated in our ways, protected by the full might of the Salvatore family. The question is whether you'll be part of that. Whether you'll stay as his mother and my... Your what? I challenged when he hesitated. Your mistress? Your kept woman? The whore you were convinced I was 3 years ago? My wife. The words hung between us like a detonation. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. What? Marry me. His voice was firm, absolute. Not because I'm trying to trap you or control you, but because Marco deserves parents who are united. Because the families need to see that you're not a weakness, but a partner. Because, Cristo, because I want you, Sophia. I've wanted you since the moment you left. And now that I know Marco exists, now that I have a son, I want us to be a family. You're insane. I tried to pull away, but his grip was immovable. You think I'd marry you after everything? After you rejected me, threatened me, accused me of betraying you? I think you'll marry me because it's the smart choice. His voice dropped, became seductive. As my wife, you're untouchable, protected by every alliance I've built, every obligation that binds the families. You'd have security, resources, the power to protect Marco in ways you never could alone. I'd also be trapped, forever bound to you, to this world, to a life I've spent 3 years escaping. You'd be a queen. He leaned down, his mouth hovering over mine. My queen, ruling beside me instead of hiding in shadows, raising our son together instead of fighting over him, building something neither of us could achieve alone. And if I say no? His smile was dark, knowing. Then we share custody. Marco splits his time between this penthouse and whatever location I deem secure enough for you. You'll see him. I'm not cruel enough to separate a child from his mother. But he'll know his father, learn his heritage, become a Salvatore whether you approve or not. It wasn't really a choice. He was offering me the illusion of decision while making it clear the outcome was predetermined. Marco would be raised in Dante's world. The only question was whether I'd be present for it. I need time to think. You have until we extract Marco. Dante's hand slid up to cup my face. Once he's safe, once we've neutralized the Calabrese threat, you'll give me your answer. And Sophia, think carefully, because this offer won't come again. And if I refuse, then I'll take Marco anyway. His honesty was brutal. And you'll spend the rest of your life fighting for scraps of time with him, watching him grow into the man I raise him to be, always wondering what might have been different if you'd chosen to stay. He kissed me then, not asking permission, simply taking what he wanted. His mouth claimed mine with devastating skill, reminding my body of everything it had missed, everything it still craved despite 3 years of distance. I should have pushed him away, should have slapped him, cursed him, reminded him that he couldn't just demand my life and expect compliance. Instead, I kissed him back. Hated myself for it, but kissed him anyway, pouring 3 years of pain and longing and desperate need into the contact. His hands tangled in my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss, and I felt myself melting against him, despite every logical reason not to. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were molten. That's what I thought. That proves nothing. My voice was unsteady. It proves you still want me. Still feel this between us. He traced my lower lip with his thumb. And before you deny it, I want you too, Tesoro. I've wanted you every day since you left, so we can keep fighting, keep pretending we don't affect each other, or we can accept what's already obvious and build something real from it. Real, I laughed bitterly. There's nothing real about this. You're manipulating me, using my love for Marco to force my compliance. I'm offering you a partnership. His voice was firm. Yes, on my terms, in my world. But a partnership nonetheless. You'd have input into Marco's education, his life, his future. You'd be my equal in every way that matters. Except I could never leave. Why would you want to? He challenged. What's waiting for you in Boston? A minimum wage job? An apartment with broken heating? Constant fear that my enemies will find you again? He wasn't wrong. The life I'd built was unstable, fragile, one disaster away from collapse. But it had been mine. My choices, my rules, my freedom. I'll think about it. It was the best I could offer. That's all I ask. He released me, stepped back to his professional distance. For now, we focus on Marco. The extraction is set for 0600, 6 hours from now. Get some rest. You'll need it. I can't sleep. Try anyway. He moved back to his desk, began reviewing documents as though we hadn't just had a life-altering conversation. And Sophia, whatever you decide about us, I will be Marco's father. That's not negotiable. So think carefully about whether you want to fight me for the next 15 years or partner with me. I left his office without responding, my mind spinning. Back in my room, I collapsed onto the bed and tried to process everything. Dante wanted to marry me, wanted us to be a family, wanted Marco raised as his heir. And God help me, part of me wanted it too. Wanted the security, the resources, the protection that came with being Dante Salvatore's wife. Wanted Marco to know his father, to grow up with advantages I could never provide alone. But the cost was my freedom, my independence, my soul. Outside the window, dawn was breaking. In 6 hours, we'd storm the Calabrese estate, rescue Marco or die trying. And after that, I'd have to make the most important decision of my life. Stay with the man who'd destroyed me, or lose my son forever. The garbage truck arrived at the Calabrese estate at exactly 6:47 a.m. I watched through the body camera feed as our people, dressed in sanitation worker uniforms, faces partially obscured by caps and the natural grime of the job, approached the guarded gate. My heart hammered against my ribs hard enough to hurt. "Steady," Dante murmured beside me in the command center. He'd been monitoring the operation with that terrifying calm, his dark eyes tracking every movement across multiple screens. They're trained for this. They're walking into a fortress, my hands clenched in my lap. If anything goes wrong, then we adapt. His hand covered mine briefly, squeezed once. Trust the plan, Sophia. On screen, the guard approached the truck. Carlo, leading the operation, handed over fabricated work orders while keeping his face angled away from the security cameras. The conversation was brief, professional. The guard checked his clipboard, made a notation, and waved them through. "First checkpoint cleared," Luca announced from his position at the communications console. "Proceeding to secondary access point." I watched as the truck drove through manicured grounds toward the estate's service entrance. Every second felt like an eternity. Somewhere inside that building, Marco was being held. My baby. Terrified. Alone. Probably crying for me. The truck stopped at the service entrance. More guards. More inspection. Carlo maintained his cover perfectly. Bored sanitation worker on a routine job, wanting to finish quickly and move to the next pickup. "They're in," Luca confirmed as the guards allowed access to the loading area. "Deployment in 3, 2, 1. The body cameras showed quick, efficient movement as our people split into predetermined teams. Carlo and 2 others headed toward the main waste collection points, their cover maintaining legitimacy. But Antonio and 3 others peeled off, moving through service corridors with maps memorized down to the inch. "Target location is 2nd floor east wing," Dante narrated quietly, more for my benefit than the team's. They had earpieces. They knew the plan. Intelligence suggests high-value assets are kept in reinforced rooms with limited access points. "How old is your intelligence?" I couldn't help asking. 72 hours. But infrastructure doesn't change that quickly. On Antonio's camera feed, I saw them reach a stairwell. They moved up with weapons drawn now, cover abandoned. This was the critical moment. If they were discovered now, before locating Marco, the entire operation would collapse into violence. "Contact." Antonio's voice came through, barely a whisper. 2 guards, north corridor. "Status." Dante's voice was steel. "Neutralized. Non-lethal, concealed. Relief flooded through me. We'd agreed. No killing unless absolutely necessary. Not because of morality, but because bodies created investigations, complications. Unconscious guards bought us time. The cameras showed Antonio's team progressing through the corridor, checking rooms systematically. My breath caught every time they opened a door, hoping and dreading in equal measure. Then, got him. Antonio's voice was urgent. Second door on the right. Single guard outside. Can't confirm if there are others inside. How certain are you it's the target? Dante leaned forward. Door has 3 deadbolts and a keypad. Nothing else on this floor has that level of security. Dante's decision was instant. Breach. Now. What happened next took maybe 30 seconds but felt like hours. Antonio's team moved with practiced precision, one man taking down the guard silently, while another worked the keypad with some kind of override device. The door opened. The camera showed a small room, sparsely furnished, a bed, a chair, toys scattered on the floor, and Marco. My son sat in the corner, his small body pressed against the wall, his face tear-stained and terrified. He wore the same dinosaur pajamas he'd been sleeping in when taken. His dark curls were messy, his eyes, Dante's eyes, huge with fear. Marco! I was on my feet before I could think, my hands pressed against the screen as though I could reach through it. Oh God, Marco! Sophia, let them work. Dante's hand on my shoulder, firm but not harsh. Antonio knelt before Marco, keeping his movements slow, non-threatening. Through the audio feed, I heard him speak in accented but clear English. Marco, my name is Antonio. Your mama sent me to bring you home. Marco's eyes went wider. Mama? Yes, she's waiting for you. But we need to leave right now, okay? Can you come with me? My son hesitated, his gaze darting to the door as though expecting a trap. Smart boy, cautious. But then he nodded, reaching for Chompy, his stuffed T-Rex, and took Antonio's outstretched hand. Target secured, Antonio reported. Exfiltrating now. Negative, a new voice, one of the perimeter team. We have movement, multiple vehicles approaching the estate. This is not normal traffic pattern. Dante cursed in Italian. They know. How? Unknown, but we have maybe 5 minutes before those vehicles reach the gate. Change of plans. Dante's tactical mind was already adapting. Antonio, proceed to extraction point Beta. Carlo, create a diversion. We need attention drawn away from the east wing. Perimeter teams, prepare to engage if necessary. Dante. I grabbed his arm. Marco will be in the crossfire. Not if we control the battlefield. He was already moving to a different console, pulling up building schematics. Luca, contact our people inside NYPD. I want units responding to shots fired at the Calabrese estate, but not for another 10 minutes. Buy us time. On it. I watched helplessly as the feeds showed organized chaos. Carlo's team set off fire alarms, creating confusion. Antonio carried Marco now, moving faster, the boy clutching Chompy and looking terrified, but blessedly quiet. They reached the extraction point, a service door that led to the perimeter fence, just as the approaching vehicles arrived at the main gate. Through exterior cameras, I saw at least 8 men pouring out of SUVs, all armed, all moving with military precision. Who are they? I demanded. Calabrese reinforcements. Dante's jaw was granite. Someone tipped them off, or they had scheduled check-ins with their guards, Luca suggested. Either way, we're compromised. Antonio's team reached the fence line. They'd cut through earlier, creating an exit point hidden by landscaping. But now, with alarms blaring and armed men flooding the estate, every second mattered. Go, 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 Dante commanded through the comms. I watched Antonio pass Marco through the fence to one of our perimeter team members. My son was crying now, scared by the noise and chaos. Then Antonio was through, and they were running toward the extraction vehicles positioned on the adjacent property. Gunfire erupted. Not aimed at them, not yet. But inside the estate, as Calabrese men discovered the unconscious guards, the breached room, the missing child. Shouting in Italian, orders being barked, confusion creating the precious seconds we needed. All teams, exfiltrate now, Dante ordered. Abandon cover. Priority is getting out alive. Carlo's team was pinned down briefly by guards who'd realized the sanitation workers weren't what they seemed. But our perimeter teams provided covering fire, controlled, precise shots that forced the guards to take cover rather than pursue. Then everyone was falling back, running for the extraction vehicles. I saw Marco being buckled into an SUV, Antonio beside him, talking to him in soothing tones I couldn't hear, but could imagine. "They're clear," Luca confirmed. All teams accounted for. 2 minor injuries, nothing critical. The breath I'd been holding escaped in a rush. "Where are they taking him?" "Safe house in Queens," Dante replied. "We'll meet them there. Let's go." The drive took 30 minutes through morning traffic. Dante had insisted on driving himself, dismissing his usual driver. I sat in the passenger seat of his blacked-out Bentley, my hands twisted together in my lap, alternating between relief that Marco was safe and terror about what came next. "You did well," Dante said quietly, staying calm during the operation. I wanted to scream. The admission came easily. Every second he was in that building, I was dying. "But you didn't." He glanced at me briefly before returning his focus to the road. "You trusted my people. That takes strength." "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice, Sophia. You chose to come to me for help. Chose to trust my methods even when they terrified you. That means something." Before I could respond, his phone rang. He answered via the car's Bluetooth. "Talk to me." "It's Antonio. The boy is safe, physically unharmed, scared but responsive. He's asking for his mother." My heart clenched. "I'm coming. 20 minutes." "Copy that. Sophia, he's a brave kid. Held himself together better than some adults would have." "That's my son," I said, pride and love and overwhelming relief making my voice thick. Dante ended the call, his expression thoughtful. "He has your strength, and my stubbornness. Dangerous combination. The world doesn't stand a chance." His laugh was genuine, warm. "No, it doesn't." The safe house was an unremarkable brownstone in a quiet Queens neighborhood. Nothing about it suggested the level of security Dante had installed. Reinforced doors, bulletproof windows, armed guards posing as neighbors. Antonio met us at the door, his expression relieved. "He's in the living room. Been asking for you nonstop." I didn't wait for permission. I rushed past him, through the small foyer, into the living room where... "Mama!" Marco launched himself at me, his small body colliding with mine with enough force to nearly knock me over. I caught him, lifted him, held him so tightly he squeaked in protest. But I couldn't let go, couldn't loosen my grip, couldn't stop crying. "Baby. Oh, baby. I'm here. I've got you. You're safe." The words tumbled out between sobs. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry they took you. But you're safe now, I promise." I was scared. His voice was muffled against my neck. "Bad men took me. Said you weren't coming back. They lied." I pulled back enough to see his face, to check for injuries, for signs of trauma. He looked exhausted, terrified, but physically unharmed. "I will always come for you. Always. Do you understand?" He nodded, then noticed Dante standing in the doorway. His small body tensed against mine. "Who's that?" I looked at Dante, this powerful, dangerous man who'd moved heaven and earth to rescue a child he'd only just learned existed. His expression was carefully neutral, but I saw the emotion beneath. Wonder. Fear. something raw and vulnerable that transformed his face into something almost soft. "Marco," I said gently, "this is Dante. He helped me find you, helped bring you home." "Are you Mama's friend?" Marco studied him with those dark, Salvatore eyes. Dante moved closer, slowly, keeping his movements non-threatening. Then he did something that shocked me. He knelt, bringing himself to Marco's eye level. "I'm something like that," he said quietly. "Your mama and I are old friends, and when I heard bad men had taken you, I made sure my people brought you back safe." "You have people?" "Many people. All of them work for me, and all of them helped find you because you're very important." "Why?" Marco's 3-year-old bluntness was endearing and terrifying. Dante hesitated, his gaze flickering to mine. This was the moment. The truth or another lie. I gave him the smallest nod. "Because you're my son," Dante said simply, "and I protect what's mine." Marco blinked, looked at me for confirmation. I nodded again, tears still streaming down my face. "You're my papa?" His voice was small, uncertain. "Yes," Dante's voice was thick with emotion. "If you'll have me." My son studied him seriously. Then, with the resilience of children everywhere, he squirmed out of my arms and approached Dante cautiously. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I don't know much about them," Dante admitted. "But I'd like to learn." "Okay." Marco held up Chompy. "This is Chompy. He's a T-Rex. He has big teeth, but he's nice." "It's good to meet you, Chompy." Dante shook the stuffed animal's tiny arm with complete seriousness. Then, hesitantly, he reached out and ruffled Marco's curls. "And it's very good to meet you, Marco. Can we go home now?" Marco looked between us. "I want my bed." "Soon," I promised. "We need to make sure it's completely safe first." "Your mama is right." Dante stood, and I saw him process the implications. "But until then, how would you like to stay somewhere with a pool and a game room? And maybe, if you're very good, we can get you some new dinosaur toys?" Marco's eyes went wide. "Really? Really?" Dante's smile was genuine now. "Your mama and I have things to discuss, grown-up things, but I promise you'll be safe and comfortable while we figure everything out." "Okay." My son yawned hugely. "I'm tired. Then let's get you to bed." I picked him up again, reluctant to let him out of my sight. "Come on, baby." Dante led us to a bedroom upstairs, already prepared with children's furniture, as though he'd anticipated this. I settled Marco into the bed, covered him with soft blankets, and sat beside him until his breathing evened into sleep. When I finally emerged, Dante was waiting in the hallway. "He's down." Finally. Exhaustion crashed over me now that the adrenaline had worn off. "Thank you. For everything. For saving him. He's my son." Dante stepped closer. "Thank you for giving him to me. For carrying him, raising him, keeping him safe until I could find you both." "About that." I took a breath. "Your proposal. Your demand that I marry you, stay here, raise Marco in your world. I'm listening. I need guarantees." My voice was firm despite my exhaustion. "If I agree, if I become your wife, I need to know Marco will have choices, that he won't be forced into this life if he decides he wants something different. He's a Salvatore, which means he deserves to know what that means before being bound by it." I held his gaze. "I won't raise him to be your weapon, Dante. I'll raise him to be your son, to be strong and smart and capable. But if, when he's old enough to understand, he chooses a different path, you let him. And if that different path makes him vulnerable, if my enemies see his rejection of the family as weakness, then we deal with it together, as parents, not as boss and subordinate, I stepped closer. I'll marry you. I'll stay. I'll be your partner in this insane, dangerous world, but only if you promise me that Marco gets to choose his own future. Dante was quiet for a long moment. I watched calculations run behind his eyes. The strategic implications, the risks, the unprecedented nature of what I was asking. Finally, he nodded. Agreed, with one condition. What? He trains anyway, learns self-defense, strategy, how to read people and situations. Those skills serve him regardless of what path he chooses. And if he does choose to walk away from the family, he does it as a Salvatore, with strength, not weakness. I can accept that. I extended my hand formally. Do we have a deal? Instead of shaking, Dante pulled me close, his mouth claiming mine in a kiss that sealed our agreement in a far more primal way. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his voice was rough with desire and something deeper. We have a deal, futura moglie. Future wife. Now let's go home and start building the family we both deserve. The next 3 weeks were a blur of adjustment and revelations. Marco adapted to life in Dante's penthouse with the resilience of childhood. His room, decorated with dinosaur murals that appeared overnight, became his sanctuary. Dante hired a child psychologist who specialized in trauma, ensuring Marco processed his kidnapping in healthy ways, and Dante himself surprised me daily. I watched him read bedtime stories with the same intensity he brought to business negotiations, saw him negotiate with a 3-year-old over vegetables with more patience than he showed his capos, found them building elaborate dinosaur habitats with blocks, Dante on his knees in a $1,000 suit, completely absorbed. You're good with him, I observed one evening after Marco had finally fallen asleep. He's easy to love. Dante's admission was quiet, though exhausting. How did you manage alone for 3 years? Necessity, stubbornness, occasional breakdowns in the bathroom where he couldn't hear me cry. He pulled me close, his arms secure around me. You'll never have to do that again. Cry alone, I mean. I'm here now. We're here. The engagement ring appeared 2 weeks after Marco's rescue, a stunning emerald-cut diamond flanked by sapphires. Dante slid it onto my finger during a quiet dinner after Marco was asleep, his expression vulnerable in a way I'd never seen. This belonged to my grandmother, he said softly. She wore it for 60 years. My grandfather gave it to her the day he claimed her as his wife. It's only right that you wear it now. Dante. I stared at the ring, overwhelmed by the weight of tradition it represented. Are you sure? This is a family heirloom. You're family now. You and Marco. This ring represents that. He lifted my hand, pressed a kiss to my knuckles. My grandmother would have liked you. She was fierce like you. Stood up to my grandfather when he was wrong. Raised my father to be strong but compassionate. What happened to her? Cancer. When I was 15, she made my grandfather promise to find me a wife like her. Someone who wouldn't simply obey but would challenge me, push me, make me better. His smile was sad. He died before keeping that promise. I thought I'd never find what they had. Then I met you. I kissed him, pouring emotion I couldn't voice into the contact. We'd been physically careful around each other since reuniting. Too much history, too much pain. But that night, we finally gave in to the need that had been building. He carried me to his bedroom, our bedroom now, and made love to me with a tenderness that destroyed every defense I'd built. This wasn't the desperate passion of our early relationship. It was deeper, more certain, the claiming of two people who'd found their way back to each other through darkness. Afterward, wrapped in his arms with the city lights painting patterns across the ceiling, I finally said the words I'd been holding back. I love you. I loved you 3 years ago and I never stopped, Even when I hated you for hurting me. Even when I ran. Even when I thought I'd never see you again. His arms tightened. I love you too, Tesoro. More than power, more than pride, more than anything in this world. You and Marco, you're my redemption. But redemption, I learned, came with a price. The Calabrese family hadn't accepted Marco's rescue quietly. Dominic Calabrese, the head of their organization, had lost face. His fortress had been breached. His hostage recovered. His plans destroyed. Men like that didn't forgive such insults. The first attempt came on a Tuesday. Dante and I were reviewing wedding plans with the coordinator, a tasteful affair for 200 guests at St. Patrick's Cathedral, when Luca burst in, his face grim. We have a problem. Calabrese made a move against one of our shipping operations. 12 men, coordinated attack. We repelled them, but 2 of ours are dead. Dante went cold, controlled. Retaliation? Already in motion, but Dominic sent a message with the bodies. He wants a sit-down, says he's willing to negotiate terms for ending hostilities. It's a trap, I said immediately. He wants you exposed, vulnerable. Probably. Dante stood, already shifting into his role as Don. But refusing would make me appear weak. We go, with appropriate security. No, I stood too. We don't go. We send a message back. You don't negotiate with terrorists, and you don't reward attempted kidnapping by giving him face-to-face time. Sophia, he took our son. My voice rose. He held him captive, terrified him. Probably would have killed him if we hadn't extracted him first. And now he wants to negotiate? No, absolutely not. Dante studied me for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. What would you suggest instead? Eliminate the threat, not Dominic himself. That would start a war we might not win. But his operations, his income streams, his power base. Take them apart piece by piece until he's too weak to be a problem. That could take months. Then we take months. I moved closer. You told me once that this world doesn't care about innocence, that it's about power and fear and old grudges. Fine. Let's make Dominic Calabrese fear what happens when you threaten a Salvatore. Make him an example to every other familia that might think Marco is a vulnerability. Luca was grinning. I like how she thinks. So do I. Dante pulled me close, kissed me hard. All right, we do it your way. Luca, start compiling intelligence on Calabrese operations. I want to know every warehouse, every protection racket, every illegal enterprise. We're going to dismantle his empire piece by piece. On it. Over the next 2 weeks, we waged a systematic campaign against the Calabrese family. Not violent. Violence invited retaliation. But methodical destruction of everything Dominic had built. Warehouses mysteriously burned due to electrical failures. Dock workers went on strike, refusing to handle Calabrese shipments. Judges who'd been in Dominic's pocket suddenly found religion and started enforcing the law. Protection money dried up as business owners decided they'd rather risk Calabrese anger than continue paying. And through it all, Dante made sure everyone knew why. The Salvatore family protects its own, he told every capo, every soldier, every person with ears to hear. Touch what's mine and I'll take everything from you. Not quickly, not with mercy, but completely. I watched him operate with ruthless efficiency and felt something shift inside me. This was the man I'd run from 3 years ago. Cold, calculating, capable of destroying lives without hesitation. But now, I understood the why behind the ruthlessness. He wasn't evil. He was a predator protecting his territory, his family, his son. And I'd become part of what he protected. More than that, I'd become his partner in protection. When Luca brought intelligence about a Calabrese meeting at a restaurant in Little Italy, I was the one who suggested the strategy. Don't attack them. Just show up. Uninvited. Send a message that nowhere is safe from our reach. Dante's eyes gleamed. You're learning. I had a good teacher. That night, we crashed Dominic Calabresi's dinner meeting with every capo in his organization. Dante walked in flanked by 20 of his best men, all armed, all ready. I walked beside him, my head high, the emerald engagement ring catching the light like a warning. Dominic went pale. Salvatore, this is a private meeting, and my son was a private citizen. Dante's voice could have frozen hell. Yet you took him from his home, held him hostage, threatened his life. So I thought I'd return the favor. Let you know what it feels like to have your sanctuary invaded. We could have come to terms. There are no terms. Dante cut him off. There's only this. You attempted to harm my heir. In any civilized society, that's a capital offense. I could kill everyone at this table, and no familia would question my right to do so. Silence. Absolute. Terrified. But I'm not going to kill you, Dante continued. I'm going to let you live knowing that I could have. That I was merciful when I had no obligation to be. And if you ever come near my family again, I'll revisit this decision. Understood? Dominic nodded slowly, his usual arrogance crushed under the weight of Dante's power. Good. Dante pulled me closer, his arm around my waist. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce my fiancée, Sofia Moretti, the mother of my son, the future Mrs. Salvatore. Any threat to her is a threat to me. Pass the word. We left as dramatically as we'd entered. But the message had been sent, received, and would spread throughout the underworld like wildfire. Sofia Moretti was untouchable. Marco Salvatore was protected. And Dante Salvatore's family was the most dangerous thing anyone could threaten. Back in the car, I was shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. That was insane. That was necessary. Dante pulled me against him. How do you feel? Powerful, I admitted. Terrified, exhilarated. Is that normal? For someone entering my world? Yes. He kissed my temple. You're becoming who you were always meant to be, Tesoro. My equal, my queen. Your partner, I corrected. That too. When we returned to the penthouse, Marco was asleep. But we stood in his doorway for long minutes, watching him breathe, seeing our future in his peaceful face. We did it, I whispered. We kept him safe. We'll always keep him safe. Dante's voice was absolute. Whatever threats come, whatever enemies emerge, we face them together. Together, I agreed, and meant it with everything I had. The wedding took place 6 weeks after Marco's rescue on a crisp December morning that painted Manhattan in gold and white. St. Patrick's Cathedral was filled with representatives from every major familia, not just because they respected Dante, but because they feared what would happen if they didn't attend. The message was clear. Sofia Moretti was being elevated to the highest level of protection. Insulting her would be suicide. I walked down the aisle in a custom Valentino gown, ivory silk with delicate lace sleeves and a cathedral train, while Marco scattered rose petals ahead of me. He'd insisted on participating, his small tuxedo making him look heartbreakingly grown up. Dante waited at the altar in a black tuxedo, his dark eyes never leaving mine as I approached. When I reached him, he took my hands and whispered, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You're not so bad yourself." The ceremony was traditional Catholic, conducted by a priest who'd known Dante's family for generations. The vows were standard until Dante added his own. I promise to protect you and our son with everything I have. I promise to honor you not just as my wife, but as my partner. I promise to build a life with you that our son can be proud of. And I promise to love you every day, even when you drive me insane. I laughed through tears. I promise to stand beside you in this insane world you inhabit. I promise to be the mother Marco deserves and the wife you need. I promise to challenge you when you're wrong and support you when you're right. And I promise to love you even when you're being impossible, which is most days." The congregation chuckled. Dante grinned. And when the priest pronounced us husband and wife, Dante's kiss was thorough enough to make several elderly nonnas fan themselves. The reception at the plaza was elegant, excessive, and exactly what was expected from a wedding uniting two powerful families. I danced with Dante, with Luca, with Antonio, even with Marco, who stood on my feet and giggled as I waltzed him around the floor. But it was later, after the guests had left and we'd tucked an exhausted Marco into bed, that the real celebration began. Dante carried me across the threshold of the penthouse as though I weighed nothing. "Welcome home, Mrs. Salvatore." "I've been living here for 6 weeks," I pointed out, "but now it's official. You're mine, legally, spiritually, in every way that matters." He set me down in our bedroom, began unfastening the tiny buttons running down my spine with practiced patience. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying. Perfect. Like I've finally found where I belong." The dress pooled at my feet. "Is that insane?" "If it is, we're both crazy." He shed his tuxedo jacket, unknotted his tie. 3 years ago, I let you walk out of my life because I was too proud and too scared to believe you could really love me. I won't make that mistake again." "Good." I reached for him, pulled him close. "Because I'm not going anywhere." What followed was slow, reverent, a celebration of everything we'd survived to reach this moment. Dante worshipped every inch of me, whispering in Italian, words of love, devotion, promises I only half understood but felt in my bones. Afterward, wrapped in silk sheets with his heartbeat steady beneath my ear, I asked the question I'd been holding back. "What happens now? With the families, with your empire, with all of it?" "Now we consolidate power." His fingers traced patterns on my bare shoulder. "Show everyone that the Salvatore family is stronger than ever. That you and Marco make me more dangerous, not less. By expanding operations? By being selective about which operations to expand." He pulled back enough to meet my eyes. "You were right about eliminating the Calabrese threat systematically. That's the model going forward. Strategic, calculated moves that minimize risk while maximizing impact." "You're going legitimate." I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. "I'm going smarter," he corrected. "There will always be aspects of my business that operate in gray areas. But for Marco's sake, for yours, I'm willing to shift the balance. More legitimate enterprises, fewer operations that could bring federal attention." "You'd do that for us?" "I'd do anything for you." His voice was raw with sincerity. "You and Marco are my legacy now, Sophia. Not money, not power, not territory. You. And I want our son to inherit something he can be proud of." I kissed him, slow and deep. "Then let's build it together." The next 5 years transformed everything. Dante kept his promise, gradually legitimizing his operations while maintaining just enough of the old ways to keep respect. I took over management of his charitable foundations, directing money toward causes that mattered: children's hospitals, domestic violence shelters, education programs in underserved communities. Marco grew from toddler to young boy, bright and curious and surprisingly well-adjusted, considering his unconventional upbringing. He knew his father was powerful, but Dante and I worked hard to ensure he understood power came with responsibility. On Marco's 8th birthday, Dante did something unprecedented. He took our son to one of his legitimate business operations, a shipping company that had been completely cleaned of illegal activity, and showed him how honest commerce worked. "This is boring, Papa," Marco complained after an hour of watching inventory management. "That's because legitimate business usually is," Dante ruffled his hair. But it's also sustainable. It doesn't rely on fear or violence. It's built on value provided, services rendered, trust maintained. Do you understand the difference? I think so. Marco frowned thoughtfully. But your other businesses, the ones you don't talk about, those use fear. Some of them, yes, because sometimes fear is the only language certain people understand. Dante knelt to Marco's level. But I'm trying to change that, to build something better for you. So when you're old enough to choose what kind of man you want to be, you have options. Can I choose to be a paleontologist? Marco asked hopefully. You can choose anything you want, as long as you're the best at it. I watched this exchange from the doorway, my heart full. This was the life I dreamed of when I ran 3 years ago. Dante as a father who empowered rather than controlled. Marco, with choices rather than obligations. That night, after Marco was asleep, Dante found me on our bedroom balcony overlooking the city. What are you thinking about? He wrapped his arms around me from behind. How much has changed? How much I love our life. I leaned back against his solid warmth. How grateful I am that you found us. I think you found me. He pressed a kiss to my neck. You ran into my world looking for salvation and gave me something I never knew I needed. What's that? A reason to be better, to build something that outlasts me. His hand settled over my still flat stomach, though not for much longer. We'd confirmed the pregnancy just yesterday. Marco is my heir, but you're my redemption. We're pregnant again, I reminded him. Your redemption is about to get louder and more expensive. His laugh rumbled through me. Good. This house is too quiet with just one child. You say that now. Wait until there are 2 of them running around destroying your expensive furniture. It's just furniture, Tesoro. Family is what matters. I turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd claimed me, broken me, and ultimately saved me. Do you ever regret it? Taking me back? Giving Marco? Giving us so much power over you? Never. His voice was absolute. You're not my weakness, Sophia. You're my strength. And every day I get to watch you become more of who you were meant to be. Fierce, brilliant, untouchable. You're not just the mother of my children. You're my Donna, my queen. And I wouldn't change a single moment of what brought us here. Even the bad parts? Especially the bad parts. They taught us both what we were capable of surviving. He kissed me softly. I love you, Mrs. Salvatore. Today and always. I love you too. I meant it with my whole heart. Today and always. Years later, I would look back on this moment as the real beginning. Not our wedding, not Marco's rescue, but this quiet declaration on a balcony overlooking the city that had tried to destroy us, and failed. We'd built something neither of us could have achieved alone. A family forged in fire, tested by enemies, and strengthened by choosing each other every single day. Marco grew up to be everything we'd hoped, strong like his father, compassionate like his grandmother, stubborn like both his parents. He ultimately chose his own path. Not the famiglia, but not complete rejection either. He became a lawyer, using his understanding of both worlds to bridge gaps, to create change from within the system. Our daughter, born 9 months after that balcony conversation, grew up knowing she was loved, protected, and free to choose her own destiny. And Dante and I? We ruled together. Not through fear, though his reputation ensured respect, but through strategic power, carefully cultivated alliances, and the absolute knowledge that threatening one of us meant answering to both. The Salvatore name became synonymous not just with power, but with protection. People who needed help, women fleeing dangerous situations, children trapped in abusive homes, victims of trafficking, found their way to our organization. We became what my younger self would have never believed possible, a force for good operating within the gray areas of society. Do you think Marco understands? I asked Dante years later, watching our son graduate law school with highest honors. Understands what? That he was loved enough to have choices. That his father rebuilt an empire so he'd never have to choose between survival and his soul. He knows. Dante's arm came around me. Because we showed him every day. And if he ever doubts, he can look at us, at what we survived to build this life, and know that love is stronger than fear. That family isn't about obligation, but about choice. That he's free, because we chose to be bound to each other. We did good, I said softly. We did perfect, he corrected. Because we did it together. And that, ultimately, was the truth I'd spent 3 years running from and 5 years learning. Alone, we were broken pieces of damaged people. But together we were unbreakable. I'd run into Dante Salvatore's world looking for salvation. I'd found a partner, a family, and myself. And God help anyone who tried to